After dealing with the headache that was the alternate R2B3 guide, it really feels nice to work on a different level. A level that's much simpler to explain and format into a guide. It's like taking a stroll through the forest after being cooped up in a bustling city for weeks on end. A nice change of scenery and a breath of fresh air. Oh. I forgot about the infectious fog. Hello everyone, Professor Scalar here, and welcome to the alternate R2B4 level guide. For this level, I'm going to recommend that you and your team bring in with you a biotracker, a mine deployer, and 2 burst sentries. And the reason for the biotracker is because in this level, there are going to be some fairly dark areas, as well as some zones that have a lot of infectious fog in them. And these 2 things combined will be hindering your sight quite a bit, and in any level where your sight is being hindered, it's a good idea to bring a biotracker. That way you can enhance that 6th sense of yours and just know where those enemies are located, if they're asleep or if they're awake, and what route they're taking to get to you and your team. When it comes to the mine deployer, you're going to be utilizing this for every single one of the alarms in this level, so it's definitely a good tool to bring along with you. Just don't put any tool refill into it because the amount you'll be starting off with should actually last you from start to finish, no problems whatsoever. Every run I've done, I've used 1 or 2 mines for every single one of the alarms, and then I'll usually have 1, 2, or even sometimes 3 left over for the very end of the level. When it comes to the 2 burst sentries though, this is where all of your tool refill should be going, as they are going to be very helpful for every single one of the alarms. Some of them we're going to have them in the room with us facing towards the door they'll be breaking down to get in, so they won't be utilized until after all the mines explode, but they'll still be utilized a fair amount. And in some of the alarms, or really one in particular, we're going to be leaving a door open to do a bit of a funnel strategy and make them go through a really nice kill zone that we could set up with our double burst sentry loadout. So during the alarms, we don't really have to worry about enemies all that much. If you want to, you could swap out the burst sentry for a sniper sentry or 2. Just keep in mind that they have a slower rate of fire, so you are going to have biotracker symbiosis active in order for those to work nearly as efficiently as the burst sentry, because a sniper sentry with no tagging is not bad by any means, but it's not all that great when enemies don't have that much distance they need to cover. Dropping down into level, you'll see that your main objective is to collect a specific fog turbine that will always be located either in zone 764 or 765, and then take that fog turbine to the extraction scan that will appear inside zone 763. And you're going to be starting off inside zone 760, and in here you'll be able to find the security door to zone 762, which also gives you access to zone 763, but this security door is locked and requires a color keycard in order to open it up. And that keycard is always going to be located to the west inside zone 761, so go throughout this entire area, clear out the enemies, grab the resources, and once you have everything you need, head to the western end to that security door. The security door to zone 761 is just a full team scan, so finish the scan, open it up, and then head right on inside. Inside zone 761 though, be a bit cautious, as not only are there going to be a fair amount of enemies in here, including some giant strikers, but there's also going to be a pretty fair amount of spitters, especially the further into it you go. And these spitters can be really annoying, as they very easily can chip away a little bit of your HP and give you some infection, and as many of you know, infection caps your HP, so if you have 30% of it, you cannot go above 70% HP. Or technically, I suppose you can go above it, but your HP will slowly drain until it goes beneath that threshold. So do try to be careful not to gain too much infection. There are disinfectant packs in the level as well as a station later on, but even then, it's better to not get it if you can avoid it, so keep your flashlights out. As for zone 761, like I said, there will be that color keycard in here that you need to get into zone 762, and you'll be able to find 2 security doors in here. One to zone 764 and one to zone 765. And one of these 2 you have to go into to get that fog turbine. So if you haven't already, hop onto a terminal and query the specific one you need to see which one of the 2 zones you have to go into. Then once you know and you've dealt with everything else that's inside the zone, you can head over to that security door and then start setting up your defenses. As the security door to zone 764 will have a class 5 alarm tied to it, and the security door to zone 765 is going to have a class 4 alarm tied to it. Which the reason why these 2 are different and not just simply the same is because the security door to zone 764 is technically easier to set up for, as enemies have to go through 2 doors to get to you, as 765 which only has 1, so they made the one with the easier setup a little bit longer to accommodate for it. As you can see with the map overlay though, if you are heading into zone 764, your map overlay is going to look like this. So as I said, the 2 security doors, the 2 regular doors, and you're going to make sure you shut both of them and place a mine on each of them, and then you'll have your burst entry set up similar to how you can see in the background footage in just a moment. For those of you heading into Zone 765 though, your map overlay is going to look like this, and while enemies are going to be spawning quite a bit further away from you, there's only one door that they have to go through to get into your room, so make sure that door is shut in mind, and then you're going to want to set up your burst sentries somewhere near it. Usually I'll have one facing directly towards the door, and then one that's a little bit closer to me and my team, about halfway through the room, facing towards the east. That way if enemies come down that way, the sentries start shooting at them. And as you can now see in the background footage, for those of you in 764, your sentries are right here, you're just facing them directly towards that door. That way once it breaks open and the mine goes off and blows up most, if not all of them, the sentries will just shoot at the few that do survive, or any of the enemies that spawn in afterwards and have to come after you. And that's really all the step you need to do. Get your sentries down, get the door shut in mind, and once you're good, activate the alarm door, get to work on the scans. Try to keep an eye out on the spitters when you're dealing with this alarm, as usually those scans will make you go near the walls where the spitters will be at. So if you're not constantly shining them down with your flashlight, you're going to take a pretty decent amount of damage from them and gain a lot of infection. So maybe have 1 or 2 people on your team just focus primarily on keeping the spitters down and then shooting, while the other people focus primarily on dealing with the enemies coming into the room. Once you have finished every single one of the scans though, and you've dealt with all the enemies that are still left alive, you can go out, grab your sentries, and then you can head into the zone. When it comes to Zone 764 and 765, they are quite similar to each other. It is going to be a very dark zone with a few regular strikers and shooters in there. But the thing that you probably want to keep more of an eye out for would be the large amount of spitters, as there's almost always going to be a gargantuan amount of them inside of these zones. So keep your lights out, keep those spitters down. Just make sure you don't accidentally wake up a few enemies from afar, especially if you have a long-range flashlight, as that thing will wake up enemies from very far away. I may or may not have learned that the hard way a few times. So make your way through, deal with the enemies, grab the resources, and keep an eye out for that fog turbine. There will actually be 2 fog turbines in the zone that you'll be heading into, but only one of them is the one that you actually need. But if you want to, you could by all means grab both. You don't need both in order to complete the level, but since you're going to go through some zones, or a zone with a lot of infectious fog in it, it might be nice to have 2 of these. That way your teammates can split up a little bit, and you're not all huddled around the one person holding onto the turbine itself. And then once you have everything else you want to collect, you can head back into Zone 760, go to that northern security door to Zone 762, and plug your color keycard into it. And once you do, you'll see that the security door has a Class 4 alarm tied to it. So let's take a look at a map overlay. As you can see with this overlay, there are 2 different locations enemies can spawn from. If they spawn from the west, they have to go through an open security door, and then this door right here to get into your room, so make sure you shut that door and mine it. And if you happen to find a C-foam grenade in the level, by all means feel free to use it right here now. As for the southern enemies, there are normally 3 doors they could go through to get into your room, but we're going to be leaving this door right here open to ensure that all the enemies go through here, and then you're going to want to set up your sentries similar to how you can see in the background footage. That way any of the enemies that come through this route have to go through both of the sentries line of fire to get to you, and these sentries will put in a lot of good work. I've actually had a few runs where I just simply run up there and focus on the scans and then walk away, and I don't even really have to shoot at the enemies, as the sentries will deal with most, if not every single one of them for you. Once you finish the alarm though and you pack up your sentries, you can then head into Zone 762. In here you'll be able to find a fair amount of enemies as well as resources, as well as a disinfectant station that I believe is always in the first room of the zone. So if anybody on your team has any infection whatsoever, use this to get rid of it, as it's just an infinite use disinfectant pack basically. So remove all of your infection, then grab that fog turbine and keep on going throughout the zone. As you get further into it, you'll notice that you have to go deeper in elevation, and the rooms you head into are almost completely covered in infectious fog, which can make it a little bit difficult to traverse through here. But as you make your way through the zone, you'll get to the northern end of it. We'll find the security door to Zone 763, and inside there will be your extraction scan. But before we go in there and deal with that, we have to take care of the Class 4 alarm that's tied to the security door itself. So let's take a look at one last map overlay. As you can see with the overlay, there's only one possible location enemies can spawn from, and assuming you keep these 3 doors shut, enemies will always go through these 2 doors right here. So shut those 2, mine them, and then just leave the other 3 doors shut so they don't path that way. And then when it comes to your sentries, just set them up sort of like you can see in the background footage in that long corridor portion of the room. Scans can sometimes go over near this area, so do be a bit cautious of them. If you have to walk in front of a sentry, probably a good idea to pick it up real quick, that way it's not shooting you from behind, and you just have to worry about the scans. As you can see in the footage, those sentries are doing really good work in dealing with pretty much any of the enemies that are trying to make it past them, so I had to do practically no shooting whatsoever until the very end, and even then, I didn't really need to shoot a whole lot of enemies. Once you finish every single one of the scans, deal with the last 2 of the enemies, grab your sentries, and then head up into Zone 763 itself. In there, you'll be above the infectious fog level, so you don't need to worry about that anymore. There will be 2 sleeping giant strikers in here, which you're going to want to deal with, but you can very easily take care of them, especially if somebody has a sniper rifle on them. And once they're dead, just walk over to your extraction scan, drop the fog turbine in it, and once you do, an extraction alarm is going to initiate. although this isn't really going to pose much of an issue as enemies are going to be spawning fairly far away from you, and by the time they actually make it to you, you'll get most, if not, well, yeah, you'll get about most of the extraction scan completed, anywhere from maybe 30 to 70% depending on your RNG. So it's really not that difficult to hold out here, especially if you have some ammunition left in the sentries. So just hold out on extractor for a little bit, and once it hits 100%, you are done and you have beaten alternate R2B4. And that's all there really is to it. Alternate R2B4 is the first level to introduce the big fog turbine and show players just how annoying spitters and infectious fog-filled zones can really be. You can try all you want, but in levels like this, it's almost certain that you'll be walking away with a decent amount of infection and a nasty cough to go along with it. Thank goodness for disinfectant packs and stations, I suppose. As always though, thank you for watching this video all the way to the very end. I do hope that it was able to provide you with some assistance in beating this level. If you have any tips or tricks for this level that you want to share, any questions for me, or you just have something in general that you want to say, please do let me know down in the comments. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me, and if you want to join the community I'm building, there's a link to my Discord down in the description, as well as some other links you might want to check out. Among those links being one that will take you to the official GTFO merch store, which I highly recommend you check out if you're a fellow GTFO enthusiast. Until next time, good luck prisoners as you're about to head into the second half of Alternate Rundown 2, which is where things are really going to start getting a bit more difficult, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next video.